The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound, and today we are still doing our best to get to what is in the news today and trying to be a light to our listeners rather than
really
being
I don't know about that.
well, maybe I framed that incorrectly, but
maybe that's what wishful thinking. I don't know.
Much less than mean it. You know?
Well, I am trying to. I mean, we have to try to do something to be realistic and try to also not be as completely depressing as.
It's a pretty low bar, Brooke, because Krista Noem was at the Alligator Alcatraz or the DeSantis Dachau, whichever you like, yesterday. And she actually said that the Homeland Security people had arrested a guy who tried to eat himself on the airplane. So
I saw that.
A Hannibal the Cannibal type. But instead of eating other people, he was eating himself. And I don't know if that's a true story or not. I don't think it expresses anything in particular, but it is a good, ripping, good yarn. And, you know, thank God for DHS for stopping this cannibal from eating himself at taxpayer expense.
Well, I think the guy would be mentally ill, and he doesn't need to be in a tent city.
Yeah, it's a low bar. You know, we live in a very crappy society right now, and if we bring even a little bit of like information to people or help them frame their own opinions about things or whatever it is that we're trying to do here with this podcast, I think it's a major victory over the people with the cannibals. Talking about the cannibals.
Yep. The cannibals and those that are eating dogs and cats.
Yeah.
In Springfield, Ohio. And, you know, it's amazing to me how the stories get so bizarre.
Our belief.
And our belief. And I was actually at a function one time, and this guy was there, and he's known to kind of be an embellisher of his stories, his time in the military. And he was telling this story about, you know, how this time he was in the war zone and he stayed behind to protect the people and and then his comrades and he was decorated and all this stuff. And one of the guys that I was sitting with said, "Wow, that's a pretty brave thing." And I said, "You know what the funny thing is what? That is the exact storyline to what was it? Something in the Sun. What was the movie?
A Place in the Sun?
A Place in the Sun. Wasn't that a war movie, Scott?
I didn't see it. I don't know.
Anyway, there was a war movie, and it was the exact script as that movie. And the guy goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You know, that come to think of it, it was." And it's like the Hannibal thing. It's right out of Hannibal Lecter, who, according to Donald Trump, is a real person and wasn't so bad, according to Donald Trump. I don't know. I think people that want to eat my liver with a nice Chianti is probably not somebody I want to hang out with.
But here's the great thing about that story by Trump. It's like a free association. Trump heard the word asylum, as in asylum seekers, and he thought to himself, asylum, where have I heard that term before? Oh yeah, in Silence of the Lambs, the antagonist, Hannibal Lecter, he's in an asylum. So all these people who are seeking asylum must be like Hannibal Lecter. And that's the progression of logic there. And in this one, Krista Noem has told the story before, apparently, about this guy who started to eat his own arm on the airplane, had to be taken off and brought to medical attention. But reporters as they tend to do, have asked ICE and DHS if they could verify the story, which would include what's the dude's name, where was he from, what happened, and they're getting nothing but dead silence from the other side. So it's an unverified story, like again, like the one where Trump likes to tell the story about the putting the pig's blood in the bullets and shooting them at the Muslims to somehow make them think that they're going to go to hell instead of heaven or whatever it was.
Yeah.
A General Pershing during the Philippines, I guess, the Filipino War. And that's not a true story that Trump liked telling over and over and over again. There are some of these urban legends that just kind of make it, into the mainstream. And yeah, you mentioned the eating the cats and dogs. We elected a president who got up on a podium and said, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, which none of that happened, and saying that it was Haitian immigrants that were doing it. And there's nothing even close to that.
And people went to that town and basically overran it looking around for these individuals who never existed in that capacity. And the woman whose cat got lost, and she found the cat in her neighbor's basement, and she thought her neighbors had eaten it for some, I have no idea. I think she might need to be thinking about some mental wellness herself. Said, well, I was wrong, and I didn't think this would happen. And despite that, the story is still, the excitement is still far better. It's a much better story than the cat was in the neighbor's basement and everything's fine. It's still much more exciting to think about people actually eating pets.
Really? I don't know. I don't find that overly terribly exciting. But I think you bring up a very good point, Brooke. You have to begin to ask yourself, is it a mental illness or is it just stupidity? Oh, and by the way, the movie was Tears of the Sun from 2003. I knew it had something to do with the sun for what I was talking about earlier, but I wanted to make sure I clarified that. You have to ask yourself, people that watch Honey Boo Boo, people that watch the Real Housewives of, I don't know, Bayonne or wherever, people that watch The Apprentice, people that watch Big Brother, people that watch these shows they believe it's real. Just as much as many people in my generation believe that wrestling was real. We've talked about that before. But we didn't believe any of the rest of the crap was real. We just believed the wrestling was real. And then as we grew up, sort of like when we began to get aware, for most people, it was like Santa Claus. We liked to talk about him, but we all knew he wasn't real, or the Easter Bunny, or any of those other things. Well, we grew out of it. Now, there were some people in my generation that never grew out of thinking that wrestling was real. Most of them live in trailer parks. So that's kind of the way that works. And the fact is that this is exactly what we're looking at today. We're looking at, a society, the American society, that has now been programmed that what you see on TV, regardless of how far-fetched, what you hear from people, regardless of how far-fetched, they believe it if they want to. If it somehow touches some, inner belief in their mind. You say, well, people thought it was more exciting to, be eating cats and dogs. That was an exciting story. I think it's a disgusting story. Whenever we talk about, the diet in some of the countries in Asia where they do eat cats and dogs, we look at that with repulsion most of the time. But now here we've got Springfield, Ohio, right here in the United States, and we're talking about this going on, and it wasn't. How about the guy that went up to Washington, D.C.? He was going to rescue those kids from that bloodletting Democratic cabal that was in the basement of a pizzeria. The pizzeria didn't have a basement, but he was so programmed to go do this. And I've always said, and I've said it for the last, 4 years here on this podcast. I don't worry about the Donald Trumps of the world. They'll come and go. I worry about that idiot that believes that there was a basement of blood-sucking cabal Democrats in a basement of a pizzeria that didn't have it. I worry more about the people that believed that people were eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio. I worry more about people that believe that Mama June and Honey Boo Boo is real. Those are the people that I worry about.
Well, look at the man who murdered.
Logic doesn't work. Logic doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. And look at the man who murdered those poor people in Minnesota. And I might add that neither Trump nor Vance went to the funerals or to see. And I was very happy to see. Well, not happy to see, but they had the dog who was shot also lying in state with Melissa Kirsten. I'm not sure of her last name. The dog who was also killed. The dog lay in state with her as well, which I thought was a very, very kind gesture. In Minnesota, this man who had whatever his actual problem was with his very lengthy hit list, as you say, going out and taking actual action.
And it isn't only, the people of the United States as far as just the citizens. I was watching a congressional hearing, and they were talking about, DEI and inclusion in schools. And the one congressperson said, all right, listen, you've claimed that there are kids in schools and their schools are supplying litter boxes because they're identifying as cats. Can you tell me one instance? Can you show me one instance where this has happened? And the person basically sit there and said, no, but I know it's happening. But I know it is. And you look at it and you go, what? So if you haven't got the receipts, shut the hell up. And these people don't have the receipts.
Yeah. But it's also another version of this was the mosque at Ground Zero. Remember that? The mosque at Ground Zero set people in New York. I mean, the New York Post was aligned with, it was cover to cover. The mosque at Ground Zero turned out it was not a mosque. It was it was a Muslim recreational center that happened to have a prayer room on the 5th floor of the building. And it was nowhere near Ground Zero. It was blocks and blocks away in Manhattan. That's, you could walk 4 blocks and you're in a completely different neighborhood. And it just, it created this hysteria right up until the election. And then nobody ever heard it again, So it's just the kind of craziness that we have. There is a bit of news. We have a trade deal with Vietnam. This is so exciting because we were promised 90 trade deals in 90 days and we have one. So
good.
So the trade deal is this. Vietnam put a 0% tariffs on American goods bought in Vietnam. Okay. And the United States raised our tariff on Vietnam from 10% to 20% on goods and something called 40% on transshipping. So if I'm not doing the math correctly, tell me, but that sounds like a 60% tariff, which means that anything that we buy here that comes from Vietnam is going to be 60% more expensive than it was before this. And the brilliant, this is a great cell phone by the government, right? And they seem to still insist that it's the Vietnamese that are paying for this tariff, not us. I mean, the incredible stupidity is just crazy. The Vietnam, by the way, was able to drop the tariff to 0% on imports from the U.S. because their GDP per capita is $4,132, and they can't afford to buy anything from the U.S. anyway. So they don't really buy anything from the USA. Why bother tariffing it anyway? But our taxes just went up. Good deal. Thank you, sir. Sir, thank you, sir.
Good deal. Yeah. And we it was kind of funny that you say that.
Wow.
We were over here at the garage having a fine adult beverage, and there's like three of us. We all need a new driveway, and we were going to get we were going to go in together, figuring that, hey, if we all, have a new driveway put at the same time, we'll probably might get a deal from the contractor. And the contractor came over, and he checked all our driveways, and the first estimate was for $12,000. And then he came over to mine, and my driveway was a little smaller, and he said it'd be like $10,000 for my driveway. And I said, wait a minute. I said, 5 years ago, we thought about this, and you came over and you gave me an estimate, and that estimate was for $3,200 for the whole driveway. And he says, yes. So he goes, with the tariffs, concrete has gone up because we don't make anything here that makes concrete. That's all from Canada. And so my two buddies, as we were having a beverage, who are Trump supporters, I said, well, thanks, Trumpy Trump. You made it so that we're not getting new driveways. And of course, they tried to tie themselves into pretzels as to why that really wasn't the case. It wasn't really all his fault. But yeah, I mean, when you got a contractor that says, yeah, I know it was $3,200 4 years ago. Now it's going to be $10,000, and that's because of tariffs, because concrete's gone up. So these people vote against their own interest, and then they do everything they can. They will tie themselves into knots to explain why it isn't, the orange Jesus's fault. And I just think that's hilarious. That it's like I always say, people would explain to me why wrestling was real. Like, really? Or people that truly believe that Honey Boo Boo is a thing. Come on, people. We cannot be that stupid.
Well, I was thinking about the co-option of the term. I think it was Dr. Bandy Lee who coined the term Trump derangement syndrome. And Trump and his people appear to have co-opted it themselves to say that anyone who disagrees with Trump or anything that Trump says is true has Trump derangement syndrome, not the other way around. And I thought that was very, very interesting. So I wondered what your
I've said before on this podcast, I think it goes both ways.
Okay. So
I think that people get so obsessed with Trump, they can blame pretty much everything on him. And there's some things that I honestly don't think he's nearly important or smart enough to have had any effect on. But there are people that believe everything that he says. Again, to me, Trump derangement syndrome is a 100% buy-in, either good or bad. But it all has one single thing. Trump is involved into it. I know Scott believes that Trump derangement syndrome goes from the opposite side, that, the believers. And again, I think the non-believers, they also can go overboard on ascribing events to that, again, if you explain it long enough, you probably can come back to Hitler at some point in time. So yeah, I truly believe that it goes both ways.
Yeah. I mean, language is always an interesting thing, right? So undocumented immigrants are hard thing to understand. What do you mean they're undocumented? But illegal immigrants is easy. So now we started talking about people being illegal immigrants. And the truth is that over time, it seems that the term illegal became harsher and harsher. And now we're building a concentration camp in Florida to hold illegal immigrants. And if they try to escape, they will have to run a gauntlet of alligators and snakes. And that's okay with these people because they're illegal. Yeah. But, it's not very illegal. It's just not, throwing litter on the floor is illegal. But it's not that illegal. It's a $400 fine or something like that. Going through a red light, you get a traffic ticket. It's not very much, There are different degrees of crime, and they're treating these guys like they're mass murderers. Yeah. And if you wanted to get rid of the mass murderers or the rapists, or you want to make Lake and Riley safe, and I understand all that, that's That should be a focus point, but it isn't, because Tom Homan has declared that it's too difficult to catch real criminals. It's so much easier to round up busboys and people standing around a Home Depot parking lot hoping for work.
Yeah.
Or arresting the people who get off the bus on their way to the local Hilton hotel to work as chambermaids and busboys and things like that. It's easier to just round up those people as they get off the bus. It's really easy, by the way, to get people who are documented immigrants as they go to their hearings as per the law and come out of their hearings to only find that they're being arrested and sent to God knows where. And
I was about to add that that's the easiest way they come out of their hearings, and then they get grabbed in the hallway.
Right. But that's we see this kind of play with language all the time. Fake news was similarly adopted and changed by Trump and the Trump people. Fake news was once used for Fox. This is fake news. This is just made up, or is what's her name said, alternative facts. And that has been taken to say that all of the news, the mainstream news, is all fake news, and that you can only get the real truth by, I guess, reading the tweets of Donald Trump or going to Fox or something like that. I don't know. I mean, we live in a crazy place. I want to make sure that I don't lose this one, because there's a woman named Uriana. She's called Julie Calderon. She lives in Huntington, I think it is, California. And she's a local activist with a community organization called the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. And she also happens to be a mother of 3. Well, Julie was accosted and abducted at gunpoint by 2 men wearing masks in an unmarked vehicle. And she was taken away and held for 2 days before anybody could get in touch with her. She was finally able to make a phone call to a lawyer. And during the phone call, she said, "I was not taken to a detention center. I was not processed. I was taken to the border at San Ysidro and given self-deportation paperwork." And when she refused to sign the paperwork, when she said, "I need to see a judge with my lawyer," she was taken back to an unmarked van along with other people who were also insisting that their rights be respected. And they were taken to a warehouse where they were given no food but only water for days, where men and women were held together in one big area, and where there were no law enforcement employees there, no officials at all, just a group of vigilantes. And she was told she would be held there until she signs the voluntary self-deportation paperwork. Trump talked about deportation paperwork, self-deportation the other day, and said it's going real gangbusters, with people deporting themselves all the time. And now I think you can get a little window into why. If you're being held in a warehouse at gunpoint by vigilantes and stripped of all your rights until you sign a paper that says you're willing to go, that's, I guess, better than going to a camp where there's going to be snakes and alligators watching over you. And this woman, by the way, has been in this country for over 20 years. She's a member of the community. She's not she's not a murderer. She had nothing to do with Laken Riley. She's just, just a mother and a community-minded person who happens to have brown skin. And, we're seeing more and more craziness. I mentioned trade before. Let me bring this up, and I'll let you guys comment on it if you don't mind. Trump the other day put out I guess you would call it a press release, a tweet, to show people how spoiled countries have become with respect to the United States of America, and I have great respect for Japan, they won't take our rice in all caps, and yet they have a massive rice shortage. In other words, we'll be sending them a letter, and we love having them as a trading partner for many years to come. I don't even know what this all means, but apparently he's claiming that he's got to put tariffs on Japan because they won't even buy rice from us. Well, Japan bought $298 million worth of U.S. rice in 2024 and $114 million worth in the first 4 months of this year. So how is that not taking our rice? We're selling rice to them gangbusters, but this is the kind of stuff that passes for facts in America.
Yeah, I read that as well, Scott, and I have to admit, when I read it, I was like, first of all, the English is very bad in it. I cannot figure exactly what the hell he's talking about. Are they buying it? Or are they not buying it? Are things good or are they not good? And yeah, then I looked up, just like I'm sure you did, and so yeah, we're selling rice to people with no real problem. I mean, I don't see what the big issue is, especially the Japanese. But somebody will present it that those damn Japanese are not buying our rice, therefore we have to take it out on them. And the fact is it doesn't matter to people if it's real or not, if it's true or not. It just doesn't matter to them. And or she's just doing everything he can to make us great again. I didn't know we weren't in the first place, but you know what? When I look at people that vote for Marjorie Taylor Greene, when I look at people that vote for Susan Collins or Murkowski or some of these other schmokies, no, I don't. Maybe we aren't so great anymore. I mean, we maybe we're just not as great as we always thought we were. And again, that I truly believe that that's exactly the case. We've never been as great as we thought we were. And as long as we continue to go down the path we're going to be on, we're just going to, it's our downfall. We're not going to be great again. This is not going to make you great again. This is going to make you poor. This is going to make you a pariah in global politics, in global society. And those that say to me, and I get a lot of emails, oh, you're a globalist. Damn right I am, because that's the world today, because no one nation can survive by itself. Even the United States cannot survive alone. We have to reach out, just as we had to reach out back in the days before there were nation states. One town traded with another. It's the same concept. If during the early Middle Ages you traded with a town 50 miles away, to them that was just like trading with somebody across the world. I mean, it's always been this way, and that's how we advance. That's how we advanced out of the Middle Ages into the Renaissance, and then into modern. That's how we advanced, and we just seem to forget that well, let's just go in our shell, be a turtle, go in our shell, roll up, and we'll just take care of ourselves until we can't. So anyway,
well, we won't be able to take care of ourselves. I mean, and I keep, forgive me for going back to this Dachau in Florida, or this Alligator Alley, Alcatraz, whatever it is called. That to me looks like, unless I am mistaken, a bunch of tarps with beds underneath. It looks like tents, basically. Yeah. With it,
it was built very quickly.
This is in an area that has hurricanes and tornadoes. And Florida is completely flat. I mean, I'm not sure where this is exactly in relation to the coast and in terms of flooding and like ground level flooding. But Florida is, of course, completely flat and not that high above sea level. So there's also the potential for having the buddies from the Everglades, the alligators and the pythons and anything else that lives in the water, floating along if the ground should flood. And is there any provision for cooling this area? I mean, any fans, anything? Because that is a sweltering environment. That is like the tropics. I mean, that is a tropical environment.
It has an electrical fence, so they could plug some fans or something into that.
But otherwise, it's just an electric fence, and there's no air conditioning. There is no provision for cooling anybody. In that, you know what? They're going to wind up with people dying from heat stroke.
People will die. Yes, people will die.
The attitude of Christy Nome is that they're brown people. They like it hot.
Okay.
And look, not everybody's going to have to go there, because if farmers need servants, slaves to do their farm work, we're going to have a policy called farmer responsibility or owner responsibility, where the farmers pay the taxes for these people who are working for them, and they can stay. They're not going to get kind of citizenship, but they may get other things. But that's the policy that Trump wants to create, that will keep people working in construction and keep people working on farms and, I suppose, slaughterhouses. You know, we'll see how far they extend that. But it's essentially slavery, if not, maybe it's indentured servitude. I'm not really 100% sure if it's what you would exactly call it. I guess we'll have to wait on the details of this. But that's what he's talking about. He's talking about that the farmers need these people who are willing to work for virtually nothing, and that we need to keep those people here so that the farmers can do their work and farm. And if it just happens to be that the farmers have responsibility for them, they pay the taxes for them, these people are basically volunteering to live in America and work for nothing. And yet, I believe we did away with slavery in 1865. So I'm not really sure how all this is going, but we keep talking about how we're going backwards in time and repealing rights and things like that. This is a big one. This is a real big one.
And let's not forget the additional 5 prisons that are being built in El Salvador. I wonder how those are coming.
But again, if you look at it, Brooke and Scott, how much do you hear about those in the mainstream media today?
I haven't heard anything.
We have such a short attention span. As a nation, our attention span is no more than a week, and then we move on to the next thing. It's kind of amazing to me just how short-sighted we are of what's important and what's not important. There's more people paying to the Diddy Combs trial, which is insane. And I was listening. My wife actually has been listening to it, and these influencers who are on there talking about the law and things like that, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They have no idea. I mean, I'm listening to going, who is this idiot talking? But they're influencers, and okay, that may be, it's entertainment, and that's what we as a nation now only want. We want entertainment. Donald Trump is entertaining because. To many people, because he's mucking up the works. So, of course, Brooklyn has also stepped away again after this episode, and we'd like to thank all our listeners for spending some time with us. We'd like to thank all our subscribers for your continued support. And if you aren't a subscriber to the Nova Society on the platform you listen to, please do so. We really do appreciate it. Please keep those emails coming, and we will see you again next time on the Nova Society. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio. your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert, cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com.